Live here on LinkedIn, where I'm delighted to be interviewing the founders of Manta Ray EV. A lot of you might be familiar with Manta Ray EV from seeing us around lately, but I just thought, wouldn't it be nice before Christmas to introduce you to the guys and see how what makes them roll and how they've been getting on and what Manta Ray EV is all about. Someone has their Facebook open or something, I think. Hang on a second, let me check. The joys of live streaming. The joys. Can you hear me now? Yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear me, everybody? Yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Okay, so we have Naeem, we have Sham. Sham, look at the camera. Look at the camera, Sham. And Mark here. So tell us a little bit about, okay, first of all, Mark, tell us a little bit about Manta Ray and why you started it.
Yeah, well, I've told this story a number of times, so I'll keep it short. I did a lot of diving around the world, partly for business travel, but sometimes I went and paid for it. And as part of that diving, I saw a whole load of coral dying, basically bleaching and then disappearing. And so when I get to a point in my last corporate job, I wanted to do something that was related to removing carbon emissions from the planet and improving climate change. And having worked with Centrica, which is an energy company, who looked at an idea not dissimilar to this, I decided that a shared economy of bridging the private EV infrastructure to the public infrastructure would help with the mass adoption of EVs, and that's why I started Manta Ray EV.
Okay, but I do know that one of the reasons as well, and the reason it's called Manta Ray is because when you're at those corals, some of the essential food is disappearing for the manta ray, and you haven't actually come across a manta ray lately. Is that correct?
No, I in all my diving, and I've done over 1,000 dives, I've still yet to see a live manta ray. It's still not in there. Hi, Brian. And basically, that's the reason I called it Manta Ray, because I saw everybody's other startups in this space calling themselves Charge Up and Spark Up and
Yeah.
Electric Up and Electroverse and anything to do with electric spark up, and I thought that was actually quite a tired theme of a startup name, and so I decided to name the startup after the thing that's actually being affected by climate change, as opposed to just electric something. So
okay, well, it's certainly it's a popular topic at the moment. For you, Naeem, what made you get involved, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi all, hi everybody listening and watching. Naeem Atas, I'm the CTO. So I'm the guy who's the technology geek. I've been in the industry, or in the IT industry at least, for about 40 years. So it just shows my age. So I'm always excited when I hear initiatives where technology and green initiatives combine. So when, I feel the climate change that we've currently, the issues we've got, they're going to be solved by innovation and technology, hopefully. So when Mark approached me and Sham actually together approached me and they told me about this idea they had, I looked into it and it was really fascinating. So really I jumped at the choice, and that's how I got involved with Manta Ray.
Brilliant. And I think there's a little bit of feedback, and I'm not sure where it's coming from, so apologies to anyone watching. We might mute ourselves when we're not speaking like we were thinking earlier. Maybe we'll do that. Yeah, I don't know where it's coming from, but thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Brian, who has joined us from Canada. I know more people will pop in now. Sham, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved and why.
Cheers, Sam. Thank you, everyone, for joining. My journey's been not so dissimilar to Naeem, that I've been in the sort of IT space for quite a number of years. And in that sort of projects and different various projects, I've worked with Mark as well. and that's how I got to know Mark through work and then personal as well. But I think the main thing for me, climate sort of has always been on the radar of mine, because these days projects at school for my children have always been related to something related to the environment, especially where my children go to school. And it's been a lot of sustainability and a lot of initiatives and issues around those, and the data behind it and the science behind it. And also been traveling quite a lot to cities and places where over time, some areas we visited often times than 2 or 3 times. You can see at different times at the same time, you get the same difference in the variation of weather and climate and the effect it has around the surrounding environments. And that slowly built up an image in my mind that there's something needs to be done about this. And where I actually got my first sort of, look around from a sustainable city point of view was when I went to Switzerland, in a city where there is no internal combustion engine. And that really got me thinking about, something should be done. If a city like this could be totally internal combustion engine free, why can it not be done in other cities? And that's when I just, having discussions with Mark, Manta Ray was again positioned in a way that, it was an opportunity that I couldn't sort of not miss really. And that's how I got on board with this initiative of Manta Ray EV.
So what exactly does Manta Ray EV do? Mark, do you want to take that one for me?
Yeah, it's quite simple, really. It's Airbnb inspired, and basically what Manta Ray EV is a platform that allows a owner of a charger, whether that's private, residential, or a business, to share it with other EV drivers. And the reason it sounds very simple, but it's also very powerful, is because public charging, if you take the numbers in the UK, for example, is about 48,000 public charge points, but there are over 500,000 private charge points around on people's driveways and in people's car parking spaces at businesses. And if we could just make 5% of that private infrastructure available, that basically increases what's available by 50%. So it could be very, very powerful. And the reality is that ranges of EVs, I had the pleasure of manually creating a database of EVs, so I know this firsthand. The ranges of cars, of how long they can go, from only 2, 3, 4 years ago to what it is now, where it's in the 500, 600 kilometer range, is vastly improved, right? And the need for what I call journey charging of motorway services will become less, and what there'll be is more destination charging, which is what Manta Ray really is about, because we share charge points that are typically fast chargers as opposed to rapid chargers. So it takes a good 3-4 hours to charge a car up. So those ranges are going to change the landscape, because batteries will improve, ranges will improve, and where and how you can then charge is also different.
Okay, we have a question here actually. What are your plans for the US, from Brett? Welcome, Brett.
Mr. Berkowitz, nice to see you again. It's an old colleague of mine. He's on the West Coast, so he's in a good place for EVs. The plans for the US is to, ironically, we are looking for investors, including investors in the US. So the US is definitely on our radar. As Brett probably knows, the West Coast, or as it's known, the Electric Belt, and the northeast of the US is where most EVs are. And I know the US government has an initiative to build and do that infrastructure. It's quite in its infancy in a lot of other states. But yes, the plan is to move to the US after we go to Europe. So it's part of our rollout plan, because it's a global solution. It isn't fixed to any particular country. There is no reason for it to be fixed to one particular country. And although we are looking at the moment of potentially partnering with a hardware charging point manufacturing, it's not specific to any particular country.
And just to, sorry, Sam, to just interject briefly, if that's all right. Also to that point is that's just how everything's quite heavily focused around the actual solution of the hardware. Whereas, as Mark described, what Manta Ray is, it's actually, as said, it's almost like inspired platform like Airbnb. And I want to be very specific around that is agnostic to trying to be as agnostic from a hardware point of view to make sure it's easily accessible to whichever geography we're looking at. Obviously, there's some legal boundaries, but I think generally speaking, those are far easier to overcome in the relation to what we're trying to do, and the adoption of the concept is much more attractive for various reasons, which we can cover later on. But the idea behind it is to make it safe and accessible wherever you are with an EV driver and an EV host.
Well, actually, that was my next question. What makes Manta Ray different and what makes you stand out? And I think the part that I like about it is the safety aspect and the trust and the fact that you'll have a community around, a community of users. So Naeem, would you like to tell us, is that part of what attracted you to this as well? The fact that they are actually going to build a community of Airbnb or type hosts of EV chargers?
Yeah. So this sort of chimes in with the question you were saying, why Manta Ray EV and what made me inspired to join it, and that's exactly what it is. We want to create everything based around a community. So to the point where we want the community to be almost in the future governing and voting on the way of the direction of Manta Ray. So it's almost like if you like a distributed organization where everything isn't necessarily controlled by the center. It's the people that come on board. They govern and decide along with support from the board about the direction. So that's something that's really powerful, and that's something that's obviously quite new as far as organizations go. And we think it's collectively it will be for the better of our customers really who will be coming on board. Absolutely.
And I can see that there is a need for these kind of conversations, because we do weekly LinkedIn audio events, and a lot of the same people come back, but also, there is that, so many questions, and it's about exchanging ideas and exchanging tips, and all of that kind of stuff is really powerful. But building a community gives you power as well, of a certain amount. So, Mark, I know you've been to a lot of events lately yourself. What have you seen, coming out, and what reaction have people been giving you about Manta Ray? I know you were at the Web Summit recently.
Yeah, I mean, the Web Summit was we all were actually. So, I wasn't in some of the discussions, but what all three of us had discussions with around with people is, whether it was partners, other startups, or potential investors, they all really liked the concept, right? Like the idea, like it's thought that it had real legs, shall we say, and that there was something in it. So that was a great validation. And I think the reality is that in Brett's area around in California, there's a company there that does something not dissimilar to what we do. We're not the only ones out there that do this, and I think the way we want to differentiate ourselves is by having a trusted platform, a safe platform, right? A trusted meaning that there are no strangers on your driveway or walking up to your business or plugging into your chargers. As soon as they swipe in with their phone or our app, we know who they are, and because we verified them with KYC, which is a bank standard way of identifying your ID. And we also want to make sure that there are safety things for the host in terms of damage protection and repair and maintenance service. But as you say, the community is ultimately the biggest kind of policeman out there, because if you get good reviews as a driver or good reviews as a host, a host can basically say if a driver has less than 2 stars rating, then they can't come and plug me into me, because who knows what the reasons were for that. But ultimately, it's self-regulating with reviews and as a community. And because when you earn in-app rewards with Manta Ray, you essentially get what I call usership, which basically gives you the ability to suggest ideas and for features, but also for governance of who we partner with, who we interact with. It basically allows the community to drive Manta Ray EV, and that's ultimately what I think will bring the self-regulation of the platform.
Yeah, and I know your cat has joined us here today as well. I can hear the cat. I'm surprised my dogs haven't tried to join in. So that's the joy of working in the evenings, folks. Very welcome, Anna, who also has joined us. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions or any comments you'd like to make, please do let us know. So it's mantareyev.com. It's going down below there under the on the ticker there. So just a kind of I suppose, a little bit of fun question really is, who in business is your inspiration? Sham, who in business is your inspiration? Besides Mark, of course.
Yeah, no, thanks, Emma. I think it keeps changing depending on the flavor of the month and what comes out in the news, because there is always new innovations happening so much more often with AI, and so much more revolutionary, and there's new, how can I say, business leaders popping up for the good reasons. And I think the old traditional, the good old model of how various businesses have been developed over empires and years and decades, I think that period of turnaround of business owners and business leadership is going shorter and shorter, like 3-5 year span. So every 3 to 5 years, there's new unicorn businesses coming out, several hundred million turnover businesses. And I think it always changes for me. But most recently, I would say it's probably going to be the old cliche. Is probably going to be Richard Branson. Only the reason is because I've been studying around what he has done so far in the climate and sustainability. It's not really publicized so often, but if you do some research there and dig around, there is some great initiatives that he's trying to do, and starting from that empire building and then becoming innovative, and then going back to sustainability and trying to make innovation. It's almost like he's rolled up into many business types of different ones in all in one, in my view. And I think, but if you look in the tech space, there's more innovative people, but they're very narrow focused on a particular area. Whereas Richard Branson is, for my opinion, has got a very broad spectrum of experience, is what I would think. And that's the type of person who can really, give some inspiration, especially to me anyway.
Yeah, he's kind of cool, all right. Mark, what about you? Who inspires you in business?
Well, it's strange, because when I was a teenager and my early 20s, Richard Branson was somebody I looked to, and I read his books, and I like his innovation around business models and innovation around the not the techie stuff, but the what and how to sell it, right? It's and branding obviously is something he's pretty good at. But it kind of moved away from that, because I started looking at leaders and business people that culturally get it right. And the one that always comes up is Mark Benioff, because he's at Salesforce.com. He had a very good culture when the company was small, and then he tried to figure out through pretty innovative ways of how to keep that culture while it was growing to very large proportions. I'm not sure that he's 100% got it right, but also the guy that wrote No Rules, and I can't remember his name, unfortunately, who is I think the CEO of Netflix. That idea of having no rules in the company, and it being driven by it being motivated by the mission, not by the money and the policies, right? And basically having a company without policies, I think is also very something I really appreciate. So those are the three guys I would pick.
Is it Aaron Mayer? Is that the name of the CEO of Netflix that has the book? What's the book called?
No Rules.
Yeah, Erin, Reed Hastings, Reed Hastings, and Erin.
Aaron Mayer, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron Mayer is
Interesting.
who I normally think of.
There we go. Robert has actually told us in the chat there. Thank you so much, Robert. Well done. We love that. We love that. See, they're helping us. Our viewers are helping us. Thanks, Robert. Thanks for joining us. So same question to you, Naeem. Oh, your sound.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Trying to stay muted when I'm not speaking.
Good man.
Yeah, it as Sham said, it varies depending on which time frame you look at. I guess right now, probably the person that's the most innovative at the moment is obviously Elon Musk. So he's maybe is a bit of a stereotypical hero at the moment, but he really has quite an unorthodox way of running businesses, which I quite like actually. So he sort of thinks out of the box, and he has got some good innovations as well. But moving away from personalities, I probably I quite admire it within the UK specifically. There's quite a bit of funding involved with UK R&I and organisations like that that help companies take off. I think I get inspired by them quite a bit. It's we're in the UK, we're doing about 3.5%, I think, of GDP towards innovation, which is absolutely fantastic for small organisations and helping companies take off and create the seed for the initial small organisations. So that's another one of my heroes.
Yeah, actually, just from my perspective as well, people often ask me that question in interviews, and I always say, do you know what? Anyone who gets up off their butt and actually creates something from nothing and actually wants to make the world a better place or has a purpose is really someone who inspires me, male or female, doesn't matter what country they're in, but somebody that actually just doesn't sit there moaning about not having stuff and actually gets up and makes something happen. That's my answer to that one. I know I'm not one of the founders, but just one question then, like you're in the startup phase, right? If you just mute yourself, Naeem, sorry for a second. What do you look for in an investor? If there was people really interested in Manta Ray and an investor perhaps, what is it that you look for in an investor? Mark, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think apart from money, which is always the main reason that you look for an investor, and I think the reality is that a lot of people, that's the first thing they think about is, but actually having somebody that, because between the three of us, we actually have a pretty 20, 30 years experience each of building product and delivering stuff. And I think having an investor that brings some of the user acquisition, growth hacking, marketing type stuff experience, whether that's directly or through their contacts, and that partners with us as a business is probably what I would look for most in an investor. The other alternative is to what I would probably call 1 + 1 = 3, right? A partner or an investor partner, a strategic investor that has something else that could be added to Manta Ray EV, that will actually, the sum of its parts is actually a very powerful proposition to the market and to potentially to other investors. And we're actually in the process of going through that discussion right now. So that would be something that would be very, very useful. But those are the kind of investors. Just giving us money is all very well and good, but ideally we have a partner in that investor. And I've spoken to many VCs, especially in Silicon Valley, and that they always advise founders like me, don't just pick any investor, pick somebody that is a fit with your company, with what you're trying to do, not just that gives you the $500K or the $1 million that you're looking for in a funding round, because the money doesn't help you necessarily. It obviously helps. Don't get me wrong, it obviously helps, but the reality is having somebody that's partnering with you gets you much further.
And can I ask you, how close are you to launch? Like what like for people watching today, what is the best way that they can help us? Like I know you're getting close to launch and there's a lot of work going on in the background. I'm assuming, like, is it going to be an app? Is there a wait list? Like, how can people get involved?
Yeah, on our website there is a waiting list for users to join, and there's also an ambassador program where they can earn cash and also get a revenue share of that. When you join the waiting list, it's kind of like most waiting lists. If you refer other friends and family and so on, and that you get up the rank, you basically get significant discounts on the platform. You earn some cash and something else. I don't remember what now, but so that's something that we're looking to build up so that we launch. Because the reality is, as what effectively is a two-sided marketplace, we're not in a situation where it's easy to basically get investors to come in at this point before we're generating revenue and users. So we need to build a waiting list. We need to launch this, which we're getting very close to. Get some paying users. Doesn't mean we need to be profitable yet, but we need to have paying users. We need to validate that this is a platform and a concept that works. And then I think there are many investors that I've spoken to that are willing to then jump in and invest in us as a business. And that quite often is the case. You know, we've seen many stories of startups sitting there for a year and a half, sometimes longer, because the cycle of investment, of whether people are investing or not investing, and obviously for the last almost year, investing in startups has been quite hard, tough environment, and sometimes you have to, just survive through those cycles, and then I've seen it many times where people couldn't get any investor to talk to them. They got to a certain point with their solution, and then they had to push people away and only pick the ones that were right for them. And obviously that's an ideal scenario, but and that doesn't happen to everybody, but that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, well, I mean, we actually have a question there from Philip, and we did cover this earlier, Philip. So I don't know if Naeem, if you want to take this one. Apologies if you've covered this, but how are you approaching trust and safety, particularly user verification? As I see this is a critical issue in sharing marketplace like yours. And yes, we did cover this earlier, but go ahead. Whoever wants to take that one. Yeah.
No, it's fine, Phil. We can cover that. So effectively, we do we have a KYC process where people send in all the documentation. So whenever somebody registers, there's a process they go through our governance, and we just make sure that they are who they say they are, and they do have the charger they say they have if they're offering their charger. So it's a sort of a validation of their identity and validation of their charger. And so we have a process which is actually we expect it to be automated. It's a bit like when you go in and you apply for a passport or something like that. It's the IT behind it, which I probably don't want to get too excited and go into. But yeah, we do electronic verification of each individual who joins our platform.
And the fact that we're building a community as well, Philip, of users and people that are involved, you'll nearly know them before you even get there. And who would be an ideal ambassador? Who would be your ideal person? There could be someone watching today. Like, who is an ideal ambassador for Manta Ray?
I think anybody that is climate change, is behind sustainability or climate change. I wouldn't mind the 350 million followers that Leonardo DiCaprio has, who I know this may not be public knowledge, but he spends an enormous amount of time on climate change and climate change initiatives. So somebody with a lot of followers is probably the trite answer, but somebody that also shares our mission, which is to reduce carbon emissions by enabling the mass adoption of EVs in the world. It doesn't have to be EVs, right? It could be a number of different reasons. I think I was talking to a journalist who published her article. I don't think she mentioned this in her article, in tech.eu. We actually spent half the time that we were talking not about Manta Ray EV and EVs, but also about energy generation and why tidal energy, which is persistent, consistent, and is always there, unlike wind and unlike solar, is not being harnessed. And and she said, I'm going to research it because I don't understand why it's not being harnessed either. And it's something that I said to her that if I had to do another startup, tidal energy is probably the way where I would go look, because there has to be some way of harnessing that pretty powerful, and sometimes too powerful, and maybe that's the reason why it's a problem, tidal energy, because it's always there. It's always, it's not going to switch off. There must be other ways we can harness the energy, whether it's gravity, solar, wind, because ultimately tidal energy is gravity, to generate renewable energy, so that what you plug into EVs is not coming from a coal-powered station. It actually is coming from renewable energies, and it actually helps the planet.
And would I be right, Sham, in thinking that an ideal ambassador for Manta Ray, so if you are interested in being an ambassador, for example, could somebody go on mute there for a minute, because there's a bit of feedback? Sorry, folks, sometimes this happens with lives. So like a brand ambassador, would an ideal brand ambassador be someone maybe with a community in the EV space, or a community of EV owners perhaps, but also someone maybe that has, I know someone that has an electric charger and it's on a busy street, for example. So would it be someone like that?
Yeah, Sam, I think it'd be a combination. So when Mark was mentioning, giving an example of 350 million users by Leonardo, but there's also an element of the other end of the spectrum where they may only have, say, a few thousand followers, but they're very active in the space of making a change and a difference, and they have a very strong followership of people and audiences that follow that person individually. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the EV space that they own or they maintain an influence in it, because that's a given. It's also those audiences who actually are active in the space, but not necessarily around specifically EV. It could be just sustainability and ESG initiatives, because they have all the political influence and the right influences to pull the levers that we may need, the followership and waiting list that we need. Because I do believe that, yes, if you are specifically focusing on an ambassador persona, it's very hard, because it's such a big topic, sustainability and climate, and there's so many different facets that it can be connected with. I think anyone in that stream of that spectrum which is impacted and doing something in that area, either technically, politically, or non-politically, or voluntarily, would be key people for us to work and join that waiting list. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to join the waiting list. The whole idea is behind it is promoting something that's for the greater good for wherever they are, is what we're trying to do. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. It's not just EV, it's other areas that are impacted is more important as well.
And that's why we've actually been interviewing people every week, every Tuesday at 1 p.m, folks, 1 p.m. GMT. We have a LinkedIn audio event where we interview people. They could be an EV owner. They might not be an EV owner yet. They could be in the EV space, but they might just be passionate, or they might just be passionate about climate change. So we're learning lots, and we're building that community through those. So do join us on those, folks. I've just got a couple of more questions before we finish. And please do ask a question in the comments if you would like us to feature your comment. What's your work-life balance like, guys, running a startup? Sham, go ahead. Do you want to go ahead with that one?
Oh, I thought I'd be the last one. I guess it's very hard to answer that, because I think that work-life balance question is always positioned different for different people. I enjoy what I do. I love what I do. And I think I've got a great family to support me to have that time and effort to put into it. So I think my work-life balance, if someone looks at it from the outside, says, when does this person take any rest? So it's very hard. But when I'm not focusing on things, then it's always time with the family. But I think it's very hard to not be involved, because we're all three of us are passionate about this sustainability. We're doing other things in sustainability as well. And I think we're just very, very passionate about this. And I think creating that life balance and work-life balance is very hard for me at the moment, especially when there's so much to do. And we enjoy it. We thoroughly enjoy it. I think there's been, long days and long nights for all of us in some shape or form. But I'm always finding it that the more time I spend, the more time I feel like spending more, if that makes sense. So it's very hard to slow down. But whenever I do, I think Christmas and this time is quite a nice time to slow down. But I think that answer, I'll keep it at that, because I think at the moment it's very hard to distinguish between the two from a work-life balance point of view at this moment.
Yes, and Naeem, same question to you. Work-life balance, how is it?
Yeah, so each startup has its unique challenges, so it's always difficult. With startups, it's almost like having a baby. You got to really spend time with it and look after it, and it can be quite time consuming. But as Sham said, if you're passionate about it, you don't feel like it's work. It's your hobby, and also it's very important to have a supporting family. That's really important. And another challenge is if you're into it with full in, and it's the only thing you're doing. Obviously, you've got to make sure you've got to have some savings to keep it going, or have something else on the side because some people go 100% all in. With a startup, which has its own, cash flow issues for you personally. So yeah, I'd say it's a tough one to answer. It really is, but it's not a walk in the park in terms of your.
It's not for the faint-hearted, is it?
But it's thoroughly rewarding, because it's something that you're doing, and you feel, especially if it's something that's related to sustainability and has a good positive imprint on the world, then it's always good, and it's always exciting.
And Mark, you're on the front line. I know you're in the Red Sea recently. I know you're traveling a lot, so work-life balance, I'm sure, is a challenge for you as well.
The three of us went to the Red Sea, actually. So
did you? Right. Okay.
Indeed, yes. So Naeem is being very humble and under very British, actually. So because he has a number of startup babies going on, and I think Sham has as well, as we all do, with other projects like the digital reef in the Red Sea, and I think that echoes an approach, a philosophy of startups, right? It's not, you're going into different projects, different things because you believe in them, and it's a passion from that perspective. So it's not necessarily just doing one thing. I think you end up doing multiple projects because you either excited by the technology, which is what Naeem gets excited by, or you're excited, or you get excited by some of the mission stuff and the greater good of what it's trying to do. Or I know something else that Naeem is interested in is because it relates to the family and what good it can do for children and so on. So it's something that I think is quite ingrained in people that do startups. It took me I did some spin-off startups where the parent company kindly gave me some money and said, go do a startup. So I've had some experience of doing that, but you do need to find the right kind of attitude, people that are not just satisfied with a 9-to-5 corporate job, that actually have that entrepreneurial spirit. And I want to say Sam has got some of that as well, right? She's
Thank you.
Had to break out of different areas and has lots of different projects going on, so that she and helping companies like ours to actually succeed in the marketing and in promoting the messages that we're trying to get across. So,
well, thank you for that. Thanks, I appreciate that, because I was a startup myself. Yes, many years ago, I was on Dragon's Den in Ireland. And what would be the biggest tip that you could give someone watching? We're going to wrap this up now soon. So if anyone is watching and you have a comment, and I can put it on the screen if you've got a question. But what are the biggest tips? I'll go to you first, Sham. what's the biggest tip you would give to a startup watching this today that's thinking of starting a business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you should be very, very firm in what you want to achieve as an outcome, but be flexible on your approach. So have your outcome really determined well and defined it really well from the start. But your approach should be nimble and agile and flexible. So you're constantly feedback, learning and growing, but getting to your goal, which is what you already defined as what it is right at the beginning, is one big success factor with most startups fail, is because they don't have a defined outcome. And then they start changing things, but they don't know what the outcome is going to be. But if the outcome is defined right at the beginning, exactly what it is, and then you be exceptionally flexible in your approach.
Love it, love it. And Brett says, good stuff, Brett. Thanks very much. Looking forward to seeing your progress. Naeem, what about you? Your top tip for a startup, anyone watching today?
So I would say persevere with your passion, because you'll have ups and downs, but it's the consistency to your approach and, not giving up. It takes time, and it takes time to learn. It takes time to, and sometimes, as Mark was saying earlier, you can approach something, and you can get knockbacks, for quite a long time, and then at the end, you've got particularly when you've developed some kind of an MVP, something that you can show that makes it tangible, and you show it to the people in the market, and then you can go from not having anybody interested in to trying to choose who the best person is that you want on board. So it can be a complete role reversal. So persevere with your idea. Make sure it's got a lot of utility. That's important.
Before I go to Mark, I know my tip would be get the right people around you. Because I'm not so good at certain things, and I know for me, if I didn't have Anya, my assistant, for example, like, she does the stuff that I don't like doing. So it's really important to get the right people around you so that they can do the stuff that you don't enjoy, because there's nothing worse than being in business and not enjoying what you're actually doing. So Mark, what about your tip for startups?
Yeah, I think mine is very similar to Naeem's. It's don't give up. And having been on this journey myself, I started off in one place. A little bit of what Sham said, had an outcome in mind, had a particular approach, had to ditch that approach because the investors in the market was basically telling me, if you got this stuff in it, then I'm not interested. You learn all the way along. I think you have to be open to learning about your product, your approach, your users and your customers. And if you're open to learning from that, I think you will succeed. What success actually looks like, I think you also need to be realistic, right? Not everybody's going to be Mark Benioff or Richard Branson. Success potentially means you are more like Naeem, where you have multiple babies producing results, and the collection of that allows them to go and build multiple properties all around the world. No, I'm joking, but it's.
I wish.
But my point is that success isn't always at the top here somewhere. Sometimes success is doing okay, being comfortable, but doing something that you're passionate about and you care about, without necessarily being the multi-million billionaire like Richard Branson or Elon Musk. Although after his last interview with Elon Musk about GF to invest to advertise this on X, which I'm sure you know, Sam. I'm not sure that his approach always is a good approach. It seems a little. It's not just left field though. It's done so suicidal, I think. But anyway.
Well, stranger things have happened as well. But look, thank you so much, guys. If anyone wants to contact any of the guys, Sham or Naeem or Mark, please send a message, reach out, have a chat. And we'll also we will have this on LinkedIn, and we'll be sharing it out on Twitter as well. And it'll be on YouTube. So thank you so much for your time, guys. And what would you like to leave us with? Is just go to the website mantarayev.com, and if you want to sign up to the wait list, we'd love your support. Maybe share with some friends. Anything else? Anything else, Mark? Thanks, Robert.
No. If we don't speak to you again, have a good holiday period, Christmas or whatever it is that's involved. My little gnome is saying hello back here. who came especially from Estonia to go and wish you a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining, everyone. I'll talk to you soon. Happy Christmas.
Bye.
Happy Christmas. Thanks.